Now I'm going to introduce our speaker, Rabbi Bryski. I have here a list of things, but I'm going to just tell you what Rabbi Bryski means to me. When I was a young bacher in yeshiva, and I'm living in Crown Heights in Brooklyn, and then you would get flyers and you would find out about activities that are going on in California. And many times they were in Agura Hills. And for myself and a lot of other Chabad rabbis, what Rabbi Bryski has built in the Caneo Valley, and the speeches, the lectures, the adult education center that he's built has been an inspiration for many, many people. And in a moment, as we're going to hear him speak, we'll all understand why. He's been a Chabad rabbi there for many, many years. He's married with his wife, Mati, for 25 years or more now.
Probably 30 now.
30, yeah. Who's counting at this point? 8 children, grandchildren. It's truly my honor and pleasure to call Rabbi Moshe Bryski.
Thank you so much, Rabbi Berkowitz, Rabbi Zabdi. And thank you to Elizabeth and the Gilbert family for inviting me here this evening to mark the 3rd Yahrzeit of Dr. Ron Gilbert. Very little I can say tonight can match that letter that you just read and the powerful words that Ron left to his children, or more than just to his children, to all of us who have just heard them. Because nothing can be more poignant, more to the heart, and more of an instruction and an inspiration for all of us to take with us. There's a great rabbi called the Chafetz Chaim, and he once said, with faith, there are no questions. Without it, there are no answers. Now, I don't know about the first part of his phrase, because I still have many questions. But I do know that without faith, we will never find any answers. No, we don't understand everything. And there's a lot of things that go on that we don't like. And we don't make peace with the suffering or with the tragedy. We never do. But our faith gives us the strength to carry on despite the questions, despite the pain. Our faith motivates us to bring goodness to the world in the memory of a loved one. Faith allows us to see that life has meaning. There was a philosopher who once said that he who has a why to live for can bear with almost any how. If we recognize that our life has great importance, then every moment of life becomes meaningful, even the dark moments. There was a group of handicapped Israeli soldiers that were taken from Eretz Yisrael on a trip to New York. They were given a treat. And on this trip, they organized that they should have an audience with the Lubavitcher Rebbe. So the Rebbe comes into 770, and all of these Israeli soldiers, some in wheelchairs, some with one arm, various different handicaps are there. And the Rebbe begins by saying that he has a problem with them being called handicap. They didn't like the word, because handicap seems to imply something negative. The proper word, the Rebbe said, is that you're unique. You're in a unique position. That God has a role for you to play in this world in the condition that you find yourself. Not a handicap role of unimportance, but a unique role of tremendous importance. When one suffers a tragedy, when one is suffering in pain, they are also in a unique position. And the Rebbe always taught us that we must translate pain into action and tears into growth. We forge ahead. We effect change. We work doubly hard to bring about more goodness so that others won't feel the pain that we felt. And so we intensify our efforts for more kindness, because we know how dark darkness can be. Now, those who have suffered tragedies are not handicapped. Scarred, yeah. Hurt, yes. Sad, yes. But not finished, because we don't surrender to the pain. You know, you often hear the word closure used to describe a period of time that elapses after a family has suffered a loss. I've suffered losses in my life, and I beg to differ with those who use the term closure. There are no closures when you lose a loved one. The pain of the loss never goes away. It doesn't get forgotten. But the memory of your loved one and the pain that you experience can launch you into a crusade. Only when you're in this unique position can you truly bring about change, because you're so motivated to action by the pain and by the injustice. There was a daughter that once came home to her father, and she started complaining about life and how difficult it was and how things were so hard. And she didn't know how she was going to make it, and she just wanted to give up. Every day frustration, every day obstacles, every day difficulty. She was tired of the struggle. And so her father, who was a chef by trade, took her to the kitchen. And he said, "Here's my answer to you, my dear daughter." He filled 3 pots with water. He placed them all on the stove. Soon the pots came to a boil. In one pot he placed carrots. And in the other pot he placed eggs. And in the third pot he placed some coffee beans. He let them sit and boil for a while without saying a word. The daughter is wondering, did my father hear me at all? I didn't say I was hungry. In about 20 minutes he turns off the burners. He takes the carrots out of the pot and he puts it on his plate. He takes the eggs out of the pot and he puts it onto another plate. And then he ladles some of the coffee and places it on a bowl. He turns to his daughter and says, "Darling, do you have your answer now?" She said, "No." "Do you see what's on the table?" She said, "Yes." Eggs, carrots, and coffee. He said, "No, take a closer look. Feel the carrots." It felt soft. "Take the egg and feel it. Break it." And she peels the egg, and she's holding now a hard-boiled egg. "Taste the coffee." And she tastes the coffee. Now she's really confused. And he explained to his daughter that each of them faced the same adversity, boiling water. But they each reacted differently. The carrot went in strong and hard and unrelenting, but after being subjected to the boiling water, it came out soft and weak. The egg had been fragile. Its thin outer shell protected its liquid interior, but after sitting through the same boiling water, it became hardened. The ground coffee beans were unique, however. After they were in the boiling water, they changed the water. "Which are you?" he asked his daughter. When the difficult times, when the boiling water comes knocking on your door, how do you respond? Are you like the carrot, the egg, or the coffee bean? How do we react to difficult times? Are we like the carrot that seemed hard, but with pain we wilt away? We become soft, and we lose our strength, and we lose our faith? Are we like the egg, which starts off with a soft heart, but after facing hardships we become hardened and stiff and cold? Or are we like the coffee bean? Not only won't you make me wither away or turn cold and distant, but I'll get better. I'll give off a beautiful aroma. I'll make everyone else taste great as well. Jewish history has always been like the coffee. When things are at their worst, we get better, we get stronger, and we stand up to the challenge. So many who have experienced tragedies fade away. They bury themselves with grief and can never pick up the pieces and can never carry on, and we can't blame them at all. But when there are those who have suffered and yet utilize the opportunity to bring about goodness, to assemble an audience like this, to inspire, to reach out, to ask for mitzvot to be done in the memory of a loved one, not only for themselves but for others. And these are the true heroes of our society. So I salute you, Elizabeth. Tonight, in the memory of Dr. Ron Gilbert, I'd like to take this opportunity to speak to you about life. And I begin with a story. One of the most famous and celebrated classical musicians of modern times was a violinist by the name of Joshua Bell. Joshua Bell, 30 years ago, at the age of 17, he made his debut at Carnegie Hall, and he has performed at the world's greatest symphony orchestras and with the greatest conductors of all time. His concerts till this day are always sold out. People are willing to shell out hundreds of dollars to see him play live, and he never fails to receive one standing ovation after the next, with requests for more and more and more. His violin is one of the most prized violins in all of the world, which was crafted in 1713, for which he paid $3.5 million for. Several years ago, there was a journalist from the Washington Post. His name was Gene Weingarten. Gene Weingarten decided to conduct an interesting social experiment. And he came to Joshua Bell with his idea, and Joshua Bell liked the idea, and they said, let's try it. So this is what they did. Friday, January 12th, 2007. This is just 2 days after Joshua Bell had accepted the Avery Fisher Prize, the greatest honor a classical musician in America can receive. Joshua Bell shows up at 7:51 a.m. at the mall of the Washington, D.C. Metro Station. He wasn't dressed in a tuxedo, but in jeans, a t-shirt, and a Washington Nationals baseball cap. He pretended to be a lowly street performer. He opened up his violin case, put some coins in there as some seed money, tucked his $3.5 million violin under his chin, and he began to play at a train station. The pieces he played were not ordinary songs. They were some of the most complex, breathtaking musical masterpieces that have been around for centuries. He put his heart and soul into the music as if he was performing at the Vienna State Opera House itself, producing the most elegant music ever produced from a violin. He played 6 different pieces over the course of 43 minutes on that morning in Washington, D.C. during rush hour. The Washington Post reporter was there too. He was videotaping what was going on. During the 43 minutes, 1,097 people passed by. Seven stopped to hear the music for more than a minute. 7 out of 1,097. Most of these would have paid top dollar to see him play in a theater of some kind. But here that day, they were just rushing right by. 27 people out of 1,097 took a coin out of their pocket and tossed it in while they were hurrying by Joshua Bell playing this violin. Gene Weingarten the next day had a front page story for the Washington Post. And it generated a huge response. And many people commented that when they read the story, they were moved emotionally to tears because they realized what this exercise really meant about their own hurried lives. If we were to ask any of those 1,097 people that morning that were rushing through the station, or we were to ask any crowd that's rushing during rush hour, wherever it may be, and we were to say to them, where are you going? Why are you rushing? Chances are they would say they're trying to get to work. And there's a lot of traffic, so they're late and they're behind. Some will tell us they're on the way to school. Some will say they're on the way to the gym. Some will say they're on the way to a doctor's appointment or a dentist appointment. Some will say they're on the way to the mall to do some shopping. But what if we were to follow up that question with another question? Because we're Jewish, we tend to do so. And we would say to them, but why? But why? Why are you going there? So the guy that's going to work will say, because I need to earn a living. The student will say, because I want to get a degree in engineering. The gym rat would say, because I want to be in shape. The patient would say, because I need to be healthy. And the shopper would say, because there's a great sale at Macy's today. What if we were a real nudnik and we said to them, but why? Why do you need that degree? Why do you need that salary? Why do you need another dress in the closet? Why? At that point, they would get very upset at us for bothering them because they were late. Why? Why do we do all of this? Why do we keep running and running? Is everything that we are doing really just a preparation for something else? Is it all about what's to come? As one person put it, sometimes life seems like one big laundromat. We bring in the clothes, toss them in a washer, we add some detergent and some bleach, we put in a few coins, and then we throw them into the dryer, we take them out, we fold them nicely, then we wear them, and a week later, we put it back in the laundromat again. Is that it? Is it just one cycle that we keep running to get to the next thing, to get to the next? On the sixth day of creation, God said, Na'aseh Adam, let us make man. And the obvious question by every commentator on the Bible is, us? Who's us? There's only one God. Na'aseh, plural, let us make man. And the answer is the us is you and me. He made us human beings the only beings endowed with freedom of choice. He made us his partners in fulfilling his purpose for creating this world. God invested in us. He invested within each of our neshamot, each of our souls, with the potential for us to develop those souls with the choice he gave us. So as long as we are drawing breath on this earth, we all have a purpose to fulfill and an impact to make. Every moment of life is precious. Every moment of life is a gift. And yet for most of us, days can come and days can go with little or no consequence. Most days we can write off completely as if they never happened. One day more, one day less. Rabbi Avram Palm of blessed memory was the headmaster of a very prominent yeshiva in Brooklyn called Torah Vadas. And they tell a story about Rabbi Palm that once an elderly man in his community turned ill and was hospitalized. So Rav Palm took a few moments and wrote him a get well letter, wrote him a personal letter. It took him about 5 minutes to write this letter, and he had someone bring it to this elderly man that was in the hospital. The man reads it and sees a letter from the Rosh Yeshiva himself. He wrote me a letter. He was so moved. He was so touched. He was so joyous about this letter that everyone that came to see him in the hospital had to read this letter, this personal letter that he received. And for months and months and months, this is what he treasured. This is what he kept on his pillow. Well, sadly, after a few months, the illness took a turn even for the worse, and he passed away. At his funeral, his family got up and talked about the preciousness of this letter that he received from Rabbi Palm, wishing him well. When Rabbi Palm heard after the funeral that he was spoken about at the funeral, about some letter that he had sent, he suddenly was very agitated. And they said, why? It was such a beautiful thing that you did, that you touched his heart so deeply. And he said, no, it actually frightens me. Because I'm afraid of the following. After 120 years on this earth, when I come to the heavenly world, I will be asked by the Almighty, look at the way you touched another human being's life and it took you but 5 minutes. How many 5 minutes went by that you didn't touch someone's life? How many letters didn't you write? If you could have had such an effect with just 5 minutes, if you could have given someone in the last 6 months of his life so much joy, then why only to him? Why not to so many others? Let's think about it. How much time and energy does it take already to do something sensitive and thoughtful that can have such a meaningful effect on someone else? To sit down and write someone a get well card, or an email, or a text, and simply say, I'm thinking about you. Are we too rushed? Are we too hurried? Are we too running to work, from work, to the mall, from the mall, to the gym, back from the gym? to stop and think, is there someone I haven't reached out to that I really should? Is there someone that I know that's struggling today that I can bring some element of comfort? A wise person once said, the best things in life are not things. So what's the best things in life? Family, and friendship, and faith, and gratitude, and wisdom, and knowledge, and character, and love, and kindness, and the courage to stand up for one's convictions and one's ideals. Those, my friends, are the essential ingredients for a meaningful life, and thus a truly happy life. Now, we all know the name Sam Walton, multi-billionaire and CEO of Walmart, one of the largest corporations in America. He basically put his whole life into his business, and in that arena he succeeded beyond anyone's wildest dreams. But it came at a price, because he hardly spent any time with his wife, with his children, and with his grandchildren. He didn't allow those moments of interaction and connection and celebration with his loved ones because he needed to focus on business. As he was lying on his deathbed, Walton shrugged. He struggled to get out his last words on earth. And his last words were, I blew it. I blew it. For all of his billions of dollars and his great business success, by his own admission, he failed at life. Dam of Einem Eizrim. The sages tell us life is short. And certain things live on and stay with us forever. But as Sam Walton figured out a little too late, our money is not one of them. It's not eternal. It's the good deeds that we do. It's the friends that we make that remain. There was a comedian, Stephen Wright, once said, I intend to live forever, and you know what? So far, so good. Or someone once said, they say such nice things about people at their funeral that it makes me sad that I'm going to miss mine by just a day or two. See, the reason we tend to make jokes about death is because sometimes we react to things that way when we're afraid of them. Jews were afraid of the Tsar, so they always made jokes about the Tsar. Jews are always afraid of high cholesterol, so they make jokes about food. Many of us are really afraid about death. Some are terrified of death. I think more than anything else, death scares us because we cannot wrap our heads around the notion of being in a state of non-existence. That we're going to disappear somehow, that we're just not going to be anymore. That there will be no more awareness, that we will no longer matter, that we'll be gone, there will be no trace of us. That's some frightening stuff. So there's this beautiful medrash, a beautiful parable in the medrash. And it tells us as follows. It tells, I want you to imagine this. Imagine, the Medrash says, a pair of twins resting comfortably in their mother's womb. Mom is pregnant with twins. Their mouths are closed. They're being fed through tubes entering their navels without having to exert any effort whatsoever. They're being kept warm in the fluids of the embryonic sac, which is their entire world. Everything is so wonderful. Everything is so peaceful in that sheltered environment. They cannot envision the possibility of there being any other form of life but this life, this existence as they know it. Now imagine, the Medrash says, that these twins are suddenly given the gift of consciousness and they're able to think out loud. They realize that things are starting to change. Slowly but surely they feel themselves turning, they're slipping, they're going lower and lower, and they begin to wonder, what's the future have in store for us in this world that we live in? Now the two twins, the brothers, happen to have different personalities. One is an optimist, by nature a believer. The other is a pessimist, a skeptic by nature. And the two brothers are given the ability to communicate one into another, and so they get into a debate. The believer is sure that there's got to be something else. When we continue slipping and slipping and slipping, at some point we're going to come out of this world and we're going to enter some new world existence. He says to his brother, it doesn't make sense that God would have put us into this world existence for 9 months and fed us and allowed us to grow and to develop only for it to come to an end at some point without any purpose. There must be a greater plan. We just don't know it yet. I'm sure that these 9 months were all just setting the stage for something far more meaningful to follow. His brother, on the other hand, is much more practical and more realistic. He says to his optimistic twin, there you go again, confusing your hopes with reality. Look around you. Everything that allows us to live is right here. This is it. This is existence. The womb, the sac, the umbilical cord. It's all right here. Once we get out of this place, it's sayonara. It's over, baby. There's nothing else out there. This is existence. The believing brother doesn't get discouraged. He explains patiently, no, that once we leave the mother's womb, we'll become more independent. We'll have other ways of getting food and nourishment. We'll be able to move around more freely. In fact, we'll be able to think and walk and talk and study and build and create things for ourselves. His brother mocks him and asks him to provide details. Where are you coming up with these fantasies? What proof do you have of this? And yet the believer believes with every fiber of his being that it's out there. And so the debate continues for weeks until one day it happens. The water inside the womb bursts. There's a great deal of pushing and pounding. The twins realize they're being forced out. The believer is first to go. His brother, still inside, listens closely for any hint of what's going on out there. And he hears his brother give a loud scream. And he says, you see, I was right all along. I just heard my poor brother scream in terror. It was the scream of death. It's the end of his life, and my end is next. Oy, what a tragedy. Of course, what the pessimistic twin does not hear are the joyful shouts of Mazel Tov, as his mother and father are excitingly congratulating each other on the birth of their first child, who made his grand entrance into the world with a scream, but not a scream of death, but a scream of life. That's what the Medrash tells us. What appears from one limited perspective to be the end of life is actually the beginning of a higher form of existence. So too, says the Medrash, death is not an end of life. Death is a transition whereby our souls are granted the freedom to soar above the physical limitations of our bodies, of this sack, this world that we now live in, and we're able to achieve a more blissful spiritual experience. But then again, if everything that we focus on in life is defined by our own bodies, by our struggle for physical existence and physical desires, if all we do is spend our days running from one place to the other, from school to the office, from the gym to the doctor, from the supermarket to the mall, and we're consumed exclusively with physical needs, then it becomes very difficult for us to imagine any existence beyond the physical. Because life to us is all about the body. Then hey, once the body decomposes and reverts to dust, it's game over. And if that is our perspective, then it could be a pretty frightening thing. Somebody once approached Rabbi Bryski, and he asked him a very simple question. He said, how do you know you have a soul? That's a good question. It's a good question for an entire lecture. How do you know you have a soul? Rabbi Bryski answered it in one sentence. He said, I don't have a soul. I am a soul. I have a body. I am a soul. My soul is my real existence. That's who I am. My soul was given this body. If we understand that our souls are the gift that God himself breathed into us, that there's a divine essence within us that is our very identity, then you don't have to be a great mystic to infer that just as God is eternal, so then is this soul within us eternal. Of course there's an afterlife, an olam haba, a world to come. And we'll know more about it when we get there. But for now, the practical relevance of the afterlife to our current state is simply for us to make sure that our actions in this life are taken with a sense of their eternal ramifications. The message being, we must make every moment of this life count. Make every precious day on this earth count. The real tragedy of death is that it represents the closing curtain of our ability to do more mitzvot, to do another good deed. Because at that point, we no longer have free will to do good or the opposite. It's only what we bring to that moment that will count. And so, my friends, I'd like to propose something. Not in a morbid and not in a depressing way, but on the contrary, in a galvanizing and invigorating way. Over the last 10 years, there's been this phenomenon out there called bucket lists. The idea of the bucket list is that people create this wish list of things they want to do in the limited amount of time that they have left on this earth. Or to put it more crassly, before they kick the bucket. Thus the name bucket list. Now, I don't care for the term at all. I don't like the name bucket list. But I think the concept is an intriguing one. At one time or another, I'm sure we've all thought about this very difficult question. If, God forbid, we were told that we only had a year to live, what would we do? How would we spend that time? Who would we talk to? Who would we want to visit? Who would we want to spend time with? How would we spend our last reserves, our energy? On what would we spend our money? There's a man in Chicago, his name is Sidney Glenner, who tells the story of one day on his father's 93rd birthday, he decided, you know what, it's my dad's 93rd birthday. He left work early that afternoon, went over to his parents' house, who were both in remarkable good health, both physically and mentally, and he surprised them, I'm here, it's Dad's birthday, I want to have lunch with Dad. And Mom cooks up a lunch, and they have this beautiful afternoon together, chatting, reminiscing, talking. And then he finished that, and he felt really good that he spent the day with his dad on his birthday. That night, Sidney looks at the clock, and it's 11:45 p.m. He knows his dad stays up late at night watching the comedy shows or whatever else is there. So he calls his dad again. He says, Dad, it was such a beautiful day, and I just wanted to be the last one on earth to wish you a happy birthday because there's 15 minutes left to your birthday. And his dad says, thank you so much for calling. And thank you so much for coming today. It was really very special. And by the way, Sidney, you've always been a good son. I love you. And with that, he hung up the phone. And Sidney thought that was odd, because although he was very close with his father, they just never spoke about love. It was just a natural thing. He never said, I love you, Dad. He never said, I love you, son. But they knew they loved each other. But that last line, you've always been such a good son, I love you. He was woken up that night at 3:45 a.m. with a phone call from his mother telling him that his father was in respiratory distress. Sidney rushed to his parents' home, but after he arrived, he could only stand by helplessly as the paramedics tried to revive his father, and they didn't succeed. The last words he heard from his father was the most precious of all, something that's remained with him forever. What a gift a father left him in those last moments. So if you knew that your time was extremely limited, what would you do with it? What message would you convey to your loved ones? The good news is that we're all going to be granted many, many long, happy, healthy years. That we're all going to live till 120. So we don't have to think about a question if we only had 1 year, because we have many, many years. But that idea of thinking along those lines, the idea of thinking of what really is precious to you, why should we have to wait until we're 119 to think about that? Why shouldn't we think now? What is really our lives all about? What is really most precious to us? And why not start doing them now? So what I'd like to propose is that we sit down tonight or tomorrow or over the next week and we work on, quote unquote, this bucket list, but let's get rid of the title bucket list. Let's call it our life list. The things we want to do when we're very much alive because we're very much alive. You know, they have these websites where people post all their life goals, and if you've ever gone on any of these, it's interesting to see what's number one on all of these lists. People want to dream about And one time in my life, I want to swim with the dolphins, or I want to build an igloo, or I want to hike the Appalachian trails. This one I actually do think I'd like to try to do, is to visit every Major League Baseball park in the country. It's a pretty good one. Bicycle across the Netherlands. They got some far-fetched idea. So putting the exotic stuff aside, let's make a list of goals. A list of things, of meaningful things that we want to accomplish in our life. Let's be realistic about them. Pick the things that you feel a connection to, not things you have accomplished yet, but definitely things you want to accomplish. And let's put some spiritual ideas into them as well. Let's put some truly meaningful ideas into our list. I'll throw out examples. But in any audience, you have people coming from all different backgrounds. So you pick, or you find something that resonates with you, but make that list. And don't just think, yeah, it's a good idea, I'll do it mentally. Actually take out the piece of paper, because the exercise itself will make you think. And the exercise itself of putting it on a piece of paper will actually motivate you to work on fulfilling them. Establish a weekly ritual to call your parents regularly. Every Friday before sunset, come what may, you pick up the phone, you call your mother and your father, and you wish them a Shabbat Shalom. If your parents are no longer with us, have a picture of them. Talk to them right before Shabbat. I miss you, Dad. I miss you, Mom. You can extend to Bubby and Zayd. Talk to them. Make them part of your life. Every single week, come what may, you talk to your parents. Perhaps add to your life list. Here's a goal. Once in your life, at least once, you can do it more than once if you'd like, you're going to make a shidduch. You're going to make a match. You're going to be that famous matchmaker. There are a lot of lonely people out there. A lot of lonely men, a lot of lonely women. And if you have been given the divine providence to meet someone that's single, work on it. Find someone. Speak to others. You know rabbis, you know rebbitzins, you know friends, you know people in the community. Today with Facebook, you can communicate with the world. Make someone else's loneliness your cause. You will find a way to make that shidduch, to make that match. At least once in your life, you're going to stand at one wedding and know you put the two together. Set aside time to visit with a lonely senior citizen. Not just your bubby, a total stranger as well. Go to a senior home and visit with them. Unfortunately, so many of their children who may even live in Southern California don't visit that often. And they're put into these beautiful senior homes, and they're paying extremely a nice amount of rent, and they have great activities. I'm part of many of the senior homes in my area. The activity directors are really good. But you know what they miss? They want a friend. They want a friend. They just don't want to just play bingo and watch videos. They want a friend to talk to. They want someone to tell about their life's experiences. They want to tell you where they grew up. And you know, you feel that you'll be doing them a mitzvah. Trust me, when it's all finished, you will feel that you have gained so much from that relationship as well. So put it on your life list that you want to volunteer time. There's another idea. Mentor someone. Adopt a person to mentor. There are young kids coming out of college that are totally lost. They have their degrees, but they have no idea what career to go into. And you've been successful, and you know the route, and you know what it took. Help someone out. Put them on the path. If you have a company, hire them. Mentor them. Bring them in. Now let's get into some spiritual ideas as well. If you don't, as of yet, light the Shabbat candle every Friday night in its proper time, put it on your list that you want to make it a priority in your life to get used to it. You'll get that calendar, and there's so many apps these days that can just remind you what time Shabbos candle time lighting is. And if you already light the candles, then put it on your life list that you would like to convince someone and inspire someone else to light a candle, so that you know every Shabbat there's a candle on someone's table because of your influence. And then the same as far as tefillin. If you don't, as of yet, own a pair of tefillin, put it on that list. It's time to own one. Every Jew should own a pair of tefillin. Now, once you own it, it would be a good idea to use it. Start off putting it on once a week. You get used to that, it could be once a day. You get used to once a day just saying the Shema, you'll wear it once a day, say the Shema and the Amidah. Those that already put on tefillin every single day, put it on your life list. How many people would you like to get to put on tefillin on a weekly basis? Once a week. Once a week you will have an encounter with a Jew, certainly, and you will say, excuse me, would you like to put on tefillin? Whether it's at the office, whether it's in the market, wherever it may be. But make it a life list goal. March of 2014, a Chabad Rebbitzin station in Fulton County, Georgia, tragically passed away at the age of 37. Rashi Minkowitz left behind a husband and 8 children. A few continents away, Rebbitzin Rifki Barber of Melbourne, Australia, also passed away at the young age of 49. The Chabad Rebbitzins of the world were devastated. 2 of their sisters within a span of a few short weeks. So my wife Mati, along with a number of other Rebbitzins here in Southern California, got together and they wanted to come up with a way of honoring Rashi and Rifki's memory. So they discussed the idea of launching a campaign to encourage women to begin observing the mitzvah of mikvah, a family purity. And they wanted to take on a goal amongst all of their communities to inspire 100 women to commit to start using the mikveh in the memory of their friends. So my wife came home from this meeting and she asked me my opinion. So I said, it's a good idea, but why set a goal? 100 women is a big number. Mikveh is one of those biggie mitzvot. It's a hard one to convince someone to start keeping. To take on a goal of getting 100 women to keep mikveh, be happy if you got 7. 14 is a nice, 100. I'm afraid that you guys are going to set yourself a goal and not be able to reach it, and then you're going to feel that you didn't do something in the memory of your friends. So just say you're going to set a goal to encourage as many as possible. This way you won't feel let down. So luckily, my wife doesn't listen to my advice most of the time. And luckily, she didn't listen to my advice that night. The campaign that they started that night spread beyond the West Coast. It spread throughout the world. And they're closing in on the number now of 5,000 women that have undertaken to start going to the mikveh, to bring the blessings of the mikveh and the blessings of family purity to their families. So I encourage all the women here to learn about mikveh if you don't already know about it. You have Rebbitzins in the room, and set up an appointment where you can study with them and learn all about the beauty of this mikveh. Put it on your life list. Here's another idea. If you have a Shabbat dinner already at your home, pick one Shabbat of the year that you're going to invite 10 guests to your table. I'm not talking about the uncle and aunt guests. I'm talking about 10 strangers. That's right. You get your rabbis and rebbitzins to help you find the 10 people that have not experienced the Shabbat dinner and invite them to yours. You say, but I don't know how to conduct a community dinner. You'll learn. It's fun. You don't know what's going on? That's fun too. Bring people into your home. Get used to understanding it's a family. It's a Jewish family. We're all one. We're all connected. We're all united. Join the monthly Shul club. Never heard of the monthly Shul club? That's because we're starting it tonight. If you don't go to Shul on a regular basis, put on your life list that you're going to start going to Shul on a Shabbat once a month. Already go once a month? Once a week is good. How's about Jewish holidays for 1 year? Every Jewish holiday you're going to celebrate in one given year. Everyone. I'm talking about the minors and the majors. Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, Sukkot, Shmini Atzeres, Simchat Torah. Right? You're going to do them all. You're going to do the Hanukkah and the Purim. You're going to do Pesach. You're not going to forget Shavuot this time. You're going to do them all with all of the rituals and all the traditions. I also propose that we add to our life list one of those stand-up proud mitzvahs. Something that means you're standing up proud to be a Jew, whether it means going to some rally in support of Israel, whether it means wearing that high necklace openly, whether it means putting a mezuzah on the front door of your office to stand up proud and say, this is who I am, going to a Hanukkah festival that's in the public marketplace. Stand up proud as a Jew in a public-like way. These are all suggestions. And I hope some of them resonates with you and some of them you can come up on your own. But you have to find what's your passion. What's your distinct goals? Compose your individual mission statement. Be creative, be imaginative, be optimistic, and challenge yourself. The exercise shouldn't be about fantasies, but about real goals that you can reach and that you want to reach. You know, there are classes here going on. You have classes in so many aspects of Judaism. How's about a life goal that in our lifetime we will go through verse by verse the 5 books of Moses? At some point in my life, my Bible, I've studied every single verse of it. You've already accomplished that? Pick a tractate of Talmud. But this is your heritage. Make it part of your own. 2 years ago, there was a beautiful young lady by the name of Christina Chesterman. And she was killed by a drunk driver while riding her bicycle home after a long day of studying. She was only 20 years old at the time. Christina was about to graduate from nursing school. A few weeks after her passing, her parents began the agonizing process of cleaning out their daughter's apartment. And while going through her things, Christina's mother, Sandra, came across her daughter's makeup bag. When she opened the bag, she discovered that there was no makeup inside. What was inside was a folded sheet of lined paper with a heading on top, and it said, Christina's bucket list. Her mother was stunned. What kid makes a bucket list? As a matter of fact, Christina had started compiling this list when she was 16 years old. Among the items on her list was that she wanted to tour Niagara Falls. She wanted to save a human being's life. She wanted to find love. She wanted to get married. She wanted to have a family. She wanted to go running through a field of poppies. She wanted to ride in a hot air balloon. All nice, sweet, and wholesome goals, never to be realized, as a precious life was so abruptly and senselessly cut short. Suddenly, her parents had an idea. They decided that they would go through each of Christina's items on her list, and they would do it for her, at least those items that they could do for her. And so, they visited Niagara Falls, and they checked it off the list. They ran through a field of poppies, and they checked it off the list. They took a hot air balloon ride, and they checked it off the list. All for Christina. And they still continue going through this list, and they created a website about Christina's bucket list with pictures of each item that they have already done in her memory. But something else happened. Social media picked up on this. And social media and Facebook people started hearing about it. So strangers all over the world started signing up that they too wanted to fulfill the items on Christina's bucket list. And they started sending the parents pictures of all the things that they were doing in the memory of Christina. Thousands of people, said her mom. Most of them total strangers, write to us every single day. We get 1,000 letters from people all over the list about the fulfillment of Christina's bucket list. I was deeply moved by this story and by the outpouring of love that came from all over the world to these grieving parents. The idea of completing someone else's life list for them is what was asked of each of us that we do for our lost loved ones. If God forbid someone loses a child, or a brother, or a sister, or a mother, a father, a mother, a zabi, a close friend. But if we think about this for a moment, isn't this what the Torah really is all about? Think about this. The Torah is a living, breathing life list. When we read about the life of our ancestors, they're not just stories, they're not just history figures, they are mission statements that we were called upon to make our own. So that if we save a life, we're checking something off Noah's life list. If we feed someone and we invite them into our home, we're checking it off Abraham and Sarah's life list. If we study Moses' words of the Torah, then we're checking off something on Moses' life list. If you demonstrate being proud of being a Jew and courage in your Jewish identity, that's on David's life list. And so it is with all those that came before us. They left us a challenge of fulfilling their life lists. You see, my friends, once a soul passes on to the next world, it can no longer achieve further growth on its own. But there is one way that it still can achieve it, and that is if it inspires us to do it for them, then their legacies live on. Then they indeed live on. Then they continue to inspire and motivate people in this world to perform mitzvot in their honor, and so the mitzvah belongs to them. When you live your life on a higher spiritual plane, you can achieve immortality. So those of you whose parents are in the heavenly world, or your grandparents are in the heavenly world, they can live. You can make them live. Live in the lives of your children and your grandchildren forever and ever. So let's make a resolution tonight on the third Yahrzeit in the memory of Ron. Let's learn from his life, a life of authenticity, a life of humility, a life of love, a life of friendship, a life of caring. And let's make that part of our life list experience. This would most certainly give him nachas. Let us perpetuate his goodness and his godliness and his holiness, and do this in his honor. My friends, life is not a laundromat. Not at all. Let's draw up our life lists. Let's set some real goals. Let's fill our lives with meaning, with beauty, with purpose, and with joy. You know, of all the lists and goals ever compiled in the history of the Jewish people, I don't know if any were quite as bold and as extensive and as ambitious as the one set forth by the Lubavitcher Rebbe. The Rebbe set a goal, and listen to this goal. He set this on his first day in office, which we just passed the anniversary on the 10th of Shevat. The goal was to reach out and touch the lives of every single Jew on the face of the earth. Every single Jew on the face of the earth, bar none. He dispatched emissaries. He inspired the establishment of thousands of Chabad centers. He launched one mitzvah campaign after another. And he stayed on top of each and every one of these campaigns and initiatives with a tenacious persistence that was beyond extraordinary. In everything the Rebbe did and in every teaching that he shared, what came across was the Rebbe's incredible Ahavat Yisrael, his love and his genuine love and his concern for his fellow Jew. And in this aspect, more than anything else, it's enabled him to have the impact that he did until this very day. And yet, there was one item, one major item on the Rebbe's life list that he didn't get to check off during his physical lifetime. Indeed, on the 28th day of the month of Nisan in the year 5751, 1991, the Rebbe gave a monumental talk in which he stated that he's leaving one item to us, one item on his life list that we would have to fulfill. And I quote, "I have done whatever I can to try to bring Mashiach. I'm now giving this matter over to you. Please do what you can to make it a reality. Be stubborn and be persistent, but never give up the quest." So it's up to each and every single one of us to check off that final item that has been on the list of Jewish giants of history for thousands of years, through all of our exiles. This is our mandate. This is our mission. And we can complete it. And we cannot rest until we do. I'd like to conclude with one final story. One of those who went through the hell of the Holocaust was a man by the name of Chaim Shapiro. Chaim Shapiro survived 4 concentration camps. At the start of the war, Chaim had a beautiful family, a wife and 8 children. Within the span of a little over a year, he lost his wife and 7 of his 8 children, without even having a chance to sit shiva for them. After the war, Chaim, along with his only surviving son, Baruch, were liberated from Buchenwald. They wallowed in the DP camps for nearly 3 years, until finally in 1948 they gained passage on an immigrant ship and arrived in Israel. Soon afterwards, young Baruch Shapiro volunteered to fight in Israel's War of Independence, a desperate battle for survival against overwhelming odds. Baruch had no previous training. He was taken to a ravine, he was handed a rifle, taught how to shoot, and sent off to war. Baruch distinguished himself in battle. He joined Yitzchak Rabin's Special Brigade. While fighting to break the Arab siege on Jerusalem, Baruch received a field commission as an officer and was awarded a medal for bravery under fire. One day, while sitting in his tiny living room in Tel Aviv, Chaim Shapiro glanced out the window and he saw what no soldier's parents ever want to see. There was a delegation coming up the path to his apartment. They say that Chaim Shapiro opened the door before they knocked. They say that Chaim Shapiro never even read the telegram. He just crumpled it in his hands because he knew what it meant. He knew they were coming to tell him that his last remaining son was also gone. With regards to the funeral arrangements, Chaim Shapiro made one request. He asked that his son be buried in Jerusalem. The next day, hundreds of mourners gathered on Mount Herzl, the National Military Cemetery in Jerusalem. Most of them had never known Baruch Shapiro or his father Chaim, but they had heard of this terrible tragedy, and they wanted to pay their respects. Yigal Yadin, who was the IEDF chief of staff, stood by Chaim Shapiro's side. What Hitler Yamach Shemoy had not finished in the crematoria had ended in the hands of an Arab bullet, the last Shapiro's son. As his coffin was being lowered into the ground, a strange thing happened. Chaim Shapiro began to sing. People thought he completely lost his mind, and understandably so. Yigal Yadin put his arm around Chaim to try to comfort him. Someone else went to bring him a cup of water, but he shrugged them all off, and he just continued to sing his song. The crowd had no idea what to make of it until finally Chaim Shapiro looked at them as they stared at him and he said, "I have been through a hell the likes of which most people couldn't even imagine. I lost more than 70 relatives in a little over a year. I lost 7 children. I lost my wife. I lost my parents. I have no place to mourn them, no grave. They are ashes in the skies over Europe, and I have no idea why they died. But this son, at least this son, I know why he died. He died so that we can have a home for the Jewish people in the land of Israel. And he has a grave here in Jerusalem. And that's not reason to cry, it's reason to sing." When Chaim Shapiro finished speaking, he began to sing once more. And this time he grabbed people's hands to dance. 300 mourners joined him, singing and dancing against the setting sun of a Jerusalem sky. If any of you have the occasion to visit Mount Herzl, Israel's National Military Cemetery in Jerusalem, perhaps you can stop by the section where the graves from 1948 lie. And it is there that you will find the lonely grave of one Baruch Shapiro. I ask you to look at that stone, to close your eyes, and to remember the story I shared with you here tonight. And you will understand why the Jewish people have never, can never, and will never be destroyed. That if there's one irrefutable truth of history, it's that Am Yisrael Chai. we know how to cherish life. We know how to make every moment of life count. And we also know that even in death, we live on. We live on in the memories, the legacy, and the good deeds that are carried out in their honor for generations to come. May the neshama of Chaim ben Yosef ascend in the heavenly world. May his wife Elizabeth and her dear children find comfort, happiness, celebration, nachas, and good health. Ad bias Mashiach tzidkenu. May it happen speedily in our days, even before the chasana, so your husband will be on the dance floor in the physical body, together with the entire family, together with Klal Yisrael. Amen.
Amen.